to cut your talking off. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Moms in Real Estate in the Morning. We are so excited because this is one of our favorite weeks of the month where we get to be with our in-house money expert, Danielle McKinley. Hi, friend.
Hello. So happy to be here.
Danielle, you are always so amazing and you always tee us up and you know exactly what you want to talk about. But today we're kind of throwing a wrench in things because on the back end, money questions have been one of the top questions coming out from our moms in real estate. And so today we are going to ask Danielle all of your money questions. So if you are tuning into one of our live streams, know that you can also pop a question in live and we will prioritize that. But for now, we will kick off and ask Danielle the questions that you guys have been asking us inside of our moms in real estate community. Sound good, friend?
I love this. Let's do it.
Yay. Okay. So the number one or the first question we have is how can I, as an agent, stay consistent with the budget when my income is unpredictable and expenses seem to pop up out of nowhere?
This is such a good one and so common in real estate, in commission-based businesses. So you got to look at your data. And one of the things that happens is we want to resist it because we're like, oh, we'll just go get the next deal, right? And we'll get the next check and then it'll be fine and we'll pay everything off. But that is not a strategy and you can't scale from guesswork. So the best thing that you can do, and it's going to take a little bit of time for you to see the trends, is to begin tracking your cash flow. And you need to understand what are your expenses, like your basic expenses, that your cost of living, like what do you need to pay your mortgage, to pay for your car, your phone? You need to deeply understand those numbers. And you can look at over the last year, let's say, so you could pull what did you make in 2024, or even like what's your year to date for 2025, since we're coming to the end, and divide that total by 12. Okay. And that becomes your average. But as we start to track our cash flow, you're going to be able to give your dollars better jobs, and you're going to be able to better understand the highs and lows, the ebbs and flows in your business, and exactly what you need. So step one, identify how much money you need to survive each month. Step two, look at what your total earnings were divided by 12, and that becomes your average income for the month, and then make your budget based on that. And then you're living from direction and from real numbers versus guesswork. And then once you start tracking or doing your SOTU every month and seeing what's happening, now you can make better decisions. And now you have data to look at over time that's really realistic, really dialed in, and then you can continue to build from there. But you've got to start with cash flow tracking and understanding your monthly expenses.
Well, and I would think, Danielle, that would also help identify a gap, right? If you have a gap. And so then you could focus. I know for me as an agent, one of the things that is so motivating and helpful for me is when I make things bite-sized. So when I just can identify like, okay, rather than trying to figure out how I build, a 7-figure business, I figure out how I close a $1,500 gap. Right. And then I get excited because I'm like, dang, I did that. I can do that again. Right. And then all of a sudden we just keep closing those gaps. So I love that. Kristen, do we have another question you want to ask?
Yeah. Let me add one thing to that too.
Yes.
So the other thing is that when you start to track your cash flow, you're also going to see money leaks. And I will tell you, I work with a lot of different industries, and realtors are the most notorious for paying for softwares that they're not using, for overspending on like coffees and food and not operating from any sort of direction. So it's not going to be fun when you first do it. It might feel like a little bit of a gut punch, but if you're serious about taking control of your money, it's part of the process.
Yeah. And it's freeing. Like, as much as it's like the gut punch, I think at the end of the day, if you are feeling that, just know that when you start to get these habits in place, like all of a sudden you're like, this is like actually not stressful. It's a lot more freeing than I thought. And I built it up to be something it's not. Okay. Question 2 is, what are some smart ways to prepare for unexpected costs without derailing your financial goals?
Okay. So there's a couple of different ways that we could talk through this. So as agents, you're conditioned and taught like, hey, you should have a nest egg before you even get into this business, right? So you're kind of used to that. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but it depends on where you're at in your finances right now. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of different options. And because I'm not looking at your specific situation, I may advise you differently if we like sat down for a one-on-one, for example. Okay, so if you're just getting started and you don't have a lot of extra cash flow, when you do your cash flow tracking, you look at how much your monthly expenses are, then you set aside a line item for emergency funds and you start to create the cushion. Okay, now if you're in a position where you're doing pretty well, you are what I like to call my blind swiper. You know, you're spending on your credit card and you're paying off the balance and it's like feeling okay, you're not stressing out, then we want to do something a little more strategic. So in that sense, we would want to put in place something like a life insurance policy. Okay. And why a life insurance policy with our nest egg is because if you have a incident, a car accident where you're in a coma, you get a critical condition, you get diagnosed with cancer, you can access that money, the living benefits, when structured properly, instead of dipping into your emergency funds or into your 401k or retirement policies that are going to penalize you. Okay, so but it depends on where you're at and where we start to save for a rainy day, so to speak. And then another thing that you want to consider that I really like to do with clients is working through what I call the contentment filter. And that is where we really identify, like, what is your number? Like, what's the number that makes you feel good? Because when we say we want more happiness, we actually want to be more content. And so we want to identify that first and then build a financial plan around your version, not the millions of people you see on social media that you're comparing yourself to.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because I think a lot of people are just like, oh, like, especially when they're brand new getting into real estate, like, how much do they want to make? And it's always like, I want to make $100,000. And it's why? Tell me why. It's like, well, I just heard that's what you could do your first year, you know? So
yeah,
it's good to understand it's not like looking at what everybody else has done, and more so like looking at what makes sense for you.
Yeah.
Well,
Kristen,
the
I did
other
a live
thing
on
is, like,
that.
I love this question because it builds off of the first one, right? So once you understand like your monthly expenses, now we can identify like, hey, we need a 3-month emergency savings.
Mm-hmm.
What is that number? Because when you just say like, I need 3 months, but you don't understand your numbers, you don't know how much should be in that nest egg.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yep. And then you can also start to get excited about like, okay, well, what would I love to do? And then that's where I always coach my agents on knowing their thriving number, right? Like our surviving and thriving look a little different. Okay. So this, I'm going to jump because there's no way we're going to get through all of these because you give us too much goodness. So I'm going to jump to one that sounds like she probably has a little bit more going on, because she's saying, what are some practical strategies for managing my finances with commission-based income, but as a single agent and with a side gig?
So you think this person has like a little excess cash?
I'm thinking maybe they do like, so it says, so with side gigs. So yeah, let's, I know a lot of our ladies like do things on the side. So maybe it's coaching, maybe it's products, maybe it's something else. Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of just break it down. So depending on your phases. So if you have debt, we want to prioritize paying off the debt. Okay, and we want to build a plan around that. And then we can start to save and start to establish our investment strategy and our long-term planning for our wealth. Okay, so if you've got some excess cash flow because you've got a side hustle and you're doing real estate, we want to look at, okay, do you have any debt? If yes, let's create a debt payoff plan. If no, okay, let's start to implement an investment strategy and start to really multiply our wealth and plan for the future so that we can retire and enjoy life, right? So if we're at that bucket, then at that point, you're ready for what I call the savings trifecta. And we start to implement the 3 buckets. So everyone needs to have a 401k because it is future planning. It is a tax deduction for you. So you're safeguarding your money because as an entrepreneur, you can max that out, let's say, and then that comes directly off of the gross income that you've made for the year. And then we implement an IUL to protect you. That's an insurance policy to protect you as the asset and also continue growing money. So we're diversifying your first bucket, okay? Next one is going to be a health savings account. So if you can do a traditional HSA, great. If you can't, we're putting away some money for health expenses. And then the third bucket is going to be a Roth IRA. Okay, and we don't have time to go into all 3 of them, but there's reasons behind the tax strategy and why you work in that order. And I cover all of that in my So To VIP. If it's something that you're like, I really need this, we can go a lot deeper in it. But if you have the excess money, you're ready to start building a future wealth strategy and starting to diversify that excess based on your contentment filter.
Mm-hmm. Maybe because you keep mentioning like the so-to, I don't know if they haven't seen you before, because I know we know Danielle comes on here very consistently, but you might be a first timer. So what is it?
Yeah, so I have a program that's called So2 Master Money and Unlock Freedom. And it is a financial strategy framework that I have been using for over 20 years to help people take control of their finances, understand their numbers, build budgets accordingly, and assign their dollars the best jobs. So if that is something you're like, oh my gosh, we need it, I'll give you guys the link and we can put it in the comments.
Yeah. Why don't we answer one of these, Randi? Why don't we answer one about real estate investing? Because I know a lot of people obviously get into real estate because they're interested in investing in real estate. So I'm just going to pick one. What are some smart first steps for agents who want to invest in real estate themselves but don't know where to start?
Sure. So there's so many ways we could go with this, right? Because there's so many different, like, okay, is it a long-term investment? Is it a short-term rental? Is it a flip? Right? So first you need to identify what playing ground are we going with? The safest one is going to be a long-term rental, because that's going to be I have all three, and it's going to be the easiest for you to safeguard. It's going to be the lowest risk. Now, there's risk no matter what in real estate. Everybody here knows that, but you want to make sure that you're really running the numbers and you have a cash cushion to cover the mortgage if you're going on like the rental side, that you can cover it until you find that person. You also want to think through things like, for example, I have a long-term rental in California, and we usually rent it out for 6 to 12 months. At the end of that, I have expenses. Like I replaced my floors this last time. So you also want to set aside some numbers for, new paint, new carpet, sometimes new flooring. Things break, things happen, right? Now, if you're doing a flip, then we want to really look at the numbers of what is the rehab costs, add an additional 20% to that, because there's always surprises. So I did a flip in Denver and we were at our 20% over budget. Like we made our budget, we factored in the 20%, we used every dollar. It wasn't great. We found a lot of surprises. Okay. So I think it just depends on what is the most attractive to you, and really running the numbers before you make any moves to make sure that it makes sense. And when you do that, you protect yourself and you're going to start building wealth. Now, another thing to think about is if you had a really great year, this is an incredible way to bring down your taxes, because you can do cost segregation on the property, you buy it under an LLC, run it as a business, and that'll drastically reduce the funds that you're going to owe Uncle Sam, which that could become a wash for giving you that safety net for the areas that we just talked about.
So good. Another thing too, that is just a really easy hack with us as agents is that, we can leverage our commission towards down payments. And so, if you are not ready, like maybe somebody that you're very close to that you do trust is ready, and maybe that, you could come together. And so you're thinking like, well, I have nothing to bring to the table. Well, you do, because you could use that commission as part of the down, and you wouldn't get it anyways, right? If you didn't sell that house. And so just get really creative. But one of the things I hate, Danielle, is seeing agents miss the opportunity. And I was really, really guilty of this myself. Like I served everybody's real estate needs for a lifetime and never like really got mine in. And then I was like, what the heck am I doing? Right. So I love how you made that bite size. Okay. I think we have time for one more. And so let me just really look real quick. Okay. How can I, as an agent, start building wealth now, even if I feel like I don't have that much money to invest? Oh, who was it? Somebody said this too, Danielle. I feel like this question's really good, because I just was listening to somebody like in my feed, it just popped up, and they were talking about, it's not, and my grandma always said this too, it's not what you make, it's what you spend. And so I love this. I love this question, because you don't have to be a 7-figure real estate agent to build wealth, right? So how can they do that?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this. So in today's world, we live in endless comparison. Okay. And if you think about it, when we were kids, like before social media, our comparison ratio was quite small. It was the people we went to school with, our neighbors, family and friends, where we traveled. Okay, but now when we open up social media, especially in real estate, because you're all online, you are every single day seeing somebody who's quote unquote doing better than you. And you're associating that with, okay, that means they're happier than me. And that is why it's so important to start with what is content look like for you. And when it comes to figuring out where to go and what steps and how to build the wealth, one of my favorite books is by Morgan Housel, and it's called The Psychology of Money. In it, there's this story of a janitor who was a janitor his whole life, lived beneath his means, retired, and then passed away with millions of dollars in the bank. Okay, he didn't have a fancy CFP. He didn't have any fancy tools. He literally just saved and leveraged compounding interest. So that is proof that no matter what, you can do it too. But you have to start somewhere, and the sooner you start, the more you can leverage. And if you don't know a lot about money, which is common for all of us, myself included at one point, I had to go seek this out, and like I am hungry and obsessed and always studying things about money. It's not, you're not behind, okay? So it's just starting with one thing and then being willing and open to ask for help or to go out and learn about it yourself. But even if you just are doing some sort of savings that has a compounding interest component, you're starting to build wealth.
That's so good. So what would you suggest for agents? I mean, so what is like the first compounding investment that an agent can make that's newer in their business?
So I'm like remiss to give an answer because it's so dependent on where they're at. And I don't want to advise somebody without really seeing what's going on with their situation. And like liability disclaimer, I'm not a licensed CFP. I teach everything from lived experience. So, but having said that, I'm really cautious about saying, hey, this is the one thing you should go do without seeing what's going on with them, because it depends on, like we talked about, do they have some debt? Is it good debt? Is it bad debt? Mortgages are good debt, right? Having a mortgage, that's good debt to have. So it would be, I would rather say, hey, if you're really struggling with where to start, connect with somebody who is an expert on money. It can be me, it can be somebody else that you know, like, and trust, and really sit down to map out your money moves without flying blind or just taking like something you heard on a reel or a live like this and implementing it. Like, let's make sure that it's like, does it meet your contentment filter? Is it right for where your finances stand today? And build from there.
This is why we love having you as our money expert. And that's a perfect segue to wrap today. So how would they? So, and I will just say, Danielle's one of those people that is completely approachable, and no matter where you're at, there's not going to be any judgment around that. There's just going to be a true heart and desire to help. So how would they, whether they are like just crushing it and have made six figures year over year and feel like they're just not investing that wisely, or they're brand new, how do they get in contact with you, Danielle?
Yeah, so I can give you guys a link. It's like my favorite thing ever to do is to help people understand their money story and build a map that works for them. So I do a 1-hour money mapping session where we'll actually put step-by-steps, like what are your goals? Where do we need to go? And I'll give you a blueprint that's specific for you and then be there to guide you along the way. So I can give you a link where they can book that with me.
Money mapping. I say everybody signs up for it, right, Kristen?
Honestly, I don't understand how people don't, because it's like we will literally pay for the dumbest stuff, and it's like this is literally how you this is your money. So 100% you should do it.
Yeah. And fun fact, it's a tax deduction because you're investing in learning.
Yeah.
So do you want to continue where you're at, or do you want to make some changes and save some money with the IRS?
Well, and I also think one of the things is that most agents, I find, they don't actually want to do more. They just want to leverage more. And you talked about that, right? Yeah. And so it's so interesting to me because agents will consistently be planners, right? They will read the 12-week year and they're like, oh, I'm going to replan my quarter, which you should. And they'll replan their year, but then they never actually go deep and map their money. And the issue with that is like, they just keep doing the same things over and over, and they think they need to make more. And so it's like, I've seen agents that just keep scaling and scaling and scaling up their income. And I've been guilty of that, to where I scale my income, but I'm not scaling my investments. I'm not even creating those. And so like, don't be that person. Take this opportunity. And that's why Moms in Real Estate exists with the money expert for you. So thank you so much, friend, for joining us today and always giving us all the goods. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye, ladies. Talk to you soon.
Bye.